Hello and welcome to Breakfast All Day. I am Matt, and Alonso's here, and Christy is here. We are talking about The High Note, the latest from Universal. Christy, can you describe this surprisingly awesome film?
I can and I will. Yeah, I didn't have a whole lot of high hopes for this because the ads make it look super cheesy and empty and like empty feel good and predictable. And it's none of those things. I'm surprised at how much I liked it. So it's entirely possible that my enjoyment of it is based entirely on like my comparative expectations, but it actually also is really good. It's really enjoyable. So Tracee Ellis Ross stars as this longtime like pop R&B diva named Grace Davis, which is interesting because at certain times they style her to look exactly like her mother, Diana Ross. And she is in her like late 40s and is at a point in her career where her manager, played by Ice-T, and all the folks around her think that a residency in Las Vegas is probably the best place for her at this point. Yes, Matt?
It's Ice Cube.
Ice Cube, thank you very much for stopping me. Ice Cube is her manager. And Dakota Johnson plays her personal assistant, whose name is Maggie. And she's very efficient and she's very attentive and thorough, but she has a dream of her own, and that is to be a music producer. She's very talented. She's secretly been remixing Grace's songs and wants to do more than just pick up her dry cleaning and get her Starbucks for her. And so it's their relationship. And then into it comes Kelvin Harrison Jr. as this really charming, charismatic singer who Grace decides, ooh, this can be my first client, And so she has to pretend, though, that she already is a producer in order to get him on board. And I told you guys this in a text, but it's Dakota Johnson's working girl. Essentially is what it is that she's Tess. She is working for the diva boss, but she has these dreams of her own of a great career. And so she's got to fake it in order to persuade the handsome and charming guy she wants to go into business with that she's ready for it. And then when the discovery comes as to what's really going on here, will it all fall apart for her? Which is a nice bit of symmetry for Dakota Johnson, given that she's Melanie Griffith's daughter. Alonso, you pointed out to me in a text that that Melanie Griffith is in this as somebody named Tess.
Yeah, I saw it in the closing credits. I was like, what? And so I asked the publicist, apparently on the ferry scene, appropriately enough.
Yeah, there's a ferry, of course. That too.
Yes, they had a cameo from Melanie Griffith, and they credited her as Tess. So I thought that was neat. So yeah, you have Melanie Griffith's daughter doing a neo working girl about an R&B singer played by Diana Ross's daughter. So there's a lot of nepotism happening here, but it's still really good.
Matt looks concerned. What's wrong?
So now we have a working girl shared universe.
Exactly.
The WGCU. Yeah. And the ferry is a nice touch too. It's a different reason that she's on the ferry than what Melanie Griffith is in Working Girl, but there are a lot of parallels, and they both share just this great, like, fizzy, snappy, romantic comedy tradition, right? This movie could have come out in 1940.
Sure. No, we talk about, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it could have been about a totally different kind of music. It could have been about like big band. Yeah, exactly. Or maybe Dakota Johnson has dreams of becoming like a dancer herself, but she works for this diva dancer,
Sure.
And just the banter between, I was already on board just watching Dakota Johnson and Tracee Ellis Ross play off of each other. Dakota Johnson does not get enough chances to do comedy. And she's got this tremendous kind of like sharp deadpan timing. She's got that likable thing that her mom has, where just, it'd be easy to underestimate her because she's beautiful, because she looks a certain way, but then she's got great innate comic timing. And then Kelvin Harrison comes in, and he is fucking charming as hell, and he never gets to be. When you look at like Waves and Loose, he had a very serious year the last couple of years. Who knew he could sing?
Yeah.
I mean, he's just charismatic as hell. And then the two of them have a nice chemistry with each other. So I had a giant smile on my face the entire time I was watching this, and the clothes are spectacular.
Now, we talk about how much we love movies that are about people that are good at their jobs. And this is that movie. So, like, Dakota Johnson comes in, and not only, yes, she's a very good personal assistant, but she's also has this encyclopedic knowledge of pop music. Dave pointed out she has kind of boomer taste in music, but, given her upbringing with her dad, who was a radio DJ and stuff, we sort of see where that comes from. So she's like super smart and knows her stuff and has all these ideas. And the movie is whoever kind of crafted the music element of it does a really good job of sort of walking us through the idea of what a music producer does exactly, because not everybody necessarily knows, and it's hard to convey that cinematically, but you get this idea of she'll hear a thing and she'll tweak it and she'll make these suggestions, and it makes sense. And so we sort of see what she does, we see that she's good at it, we hear that she's good at it. But yeah, she's insanely charismatic. Like, she just has this ability to, like, she'll be in a scene with somebody else and just make both of them seem like the most interesting people in the world, and that you just want to look at them for hours.
Yeah, Alonso, I'm glad you brought up the producing thing, because one of the things this movie does really well is it allows Dakota Johnson especially to teach us about producing and teach us about managing from Ice Cube as part of conversation, and it's not expository.
Absolutely.
Right? Like when she says, look, the core part of this is the singing that she's doing, and we've buried that. And she does that without being heavy-handed about it. And then when Ice Cube yells at her for messing up the thing with the other producer, he explained, like, he's teaching her because she doesn't understand why that was important,
right.
In a way that brings us along as the audience. I do think that Dakota Johnson is criminally overlooked, partly because it's somewhat the same thing that I think happened to Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson in Twilight, in that they do these big showy movies that doesn't give them much to do, and they get a bad rap because the movies are critically lambasted and similar.
So what they do next, to prove that they can actually do something else.
I can't remember the name of the movie, but I remember us talking about Dakota Johnson in the movie she did with Rebel Wilson about being single. How to Be Single. And she's really funny in that. And she's and she shows that here, that she does this. She's similar to a little bit what we talked about in The Great. She's naive at times in certain situations, but she's not dumb.
Yeah.
And
she's optimistic.
She's optimistic, and
rather.
Yeah, and she can play. She's good at comedy without being.
Same concept.
She's good at comedy without being ditzy, which is where a lot of attractive women end up going to, oftentimes, because scripts don't give them anything to do. There was even a part of this movie where I was getting a little bit worried about how you had the white girl being such the almost purist and expert on soul music. And I had this moment of like, man, where's this gonna go? And yet there's a conversation between Grace. There's a conversation after meeting with the label that Grace has with her about there's things that Grace has to go through that Dakota Johnson's character, that Melanie doesn't understand, not Melanie, Maggie doesn't understand. Like, and is never going to understand. Right. And I was like, oh, okay, good. They kind of address that. This movie's delightful.
And I'm doubly glad that they get the sort of industry part right, because this is from director Nisha Ganatra, who's a very talented filmmaker, but whose last film, Late Night, seemed to come from, like, nobody seemed to know anything about how comedy works, which is weird because it was written by Mindy Kaling. But, like, everything from stand-up to writers' rooms to like, I'm not in the industry. I'm not an expert, but I was watching this movie going, well, that's not real. That seems fake. Like, it didn't. So even if this movie is not a documentary about music production, for the most part, it feels genuine and it feels true to the lay audience. Dave was going, a singer like Grace she'd be putting out a remix album every year. Every time she had an album out, there'd be a separate, like, all kind of dance track version that they would be big in the gay clubs. So I was like, well, yeah, that's probably true. But I'd say for the most part, like, if you walk into this movie not knowing the minutia of the music industry, it at least feels genuine and feels honest. Whereas I think even in Late Night, if you didn't have to know comedy to know that there was a lot of stuff in that movie that made no sense.
And even the twist that we probably all saw coming fairly early on are delivered in a way that they go ahead and drink earn. They first of all, there's one that it doesn't happen the way you think it's going to happen, and then the one that does happen happens in such this great fun way. Yeah, I was really impressed. Like Christy, I went in this with super low expectations. But this movie, I've been recommending it. I would recommend seeing it. It's super sweet.
Yeah.
Got to mention June Diane Raphael, one of my favorite comic actresses right now. Smaller part, but like nails every moment.
Also, she feels like she is part of like a long time romantic comedy tradition of like the ditzy sidekick. And then Dakota Johnson gets, you know, the wisecracking best friend, but that is not so rote as perhaps we've seen it elsewhere. She's got a personality to her also. I wanted to mention this is a beautifully photographed film. Jason McCormick is the DP. He also shot Booksmart and Lemon, and there is like a glossy kind of like romanticized sheen about LA, which like carries it like aloft on this nice, you know, nice wave of good energy going along. But then like every once in a while there are individual images that just like stop me cold. So there's a scene at like a really high-end spa, like yoga spa meditative retreat place where Maggie has to have a conversation with another very established rock star, and she's sitting on the ground like near the yoga mat or whatever, and like the light is streaming in through the window into this like red brick room, and it's just stunningly beautiful, and real care is taken over and over again with shots like that. Like if she's sitting in her bedroom working on a song and the light comes in the window, or if she's sitting on the deck outside. I mean, in some ways this is like a very idyllic depiction of Los Angeles, you know.
Oh,
like,
totally. I was
the houses, the clothes, also geographically,
right, the way Amelie shows Paris.
Yeah.
I was like, there's a scene where they're at the Ford Theater, and it just broke my heart because like every year at Outfest I introduce at least one movie there, and so where they're standing backstage is where I stand when I wait to go out and introduce the film. It was like, oh, that's not happening this year. And also on my long list of places I've really wanted to go that I've never gotten around to going to is Catalina.
Oh, I've been to Catalina. I went once. I went on a really terrible cruise, a Carnival cruise in 2008. And that was the first stop on the 3-day Ensenada tour. And I do not recommend going on a Carnival cruise, but
no, Catalina's fun.
Catalina's really cute. Yeah.
Yeah. On the idea of this being kind of the Fantasyland version of Los Angeles, there's a couple things I wanted to bring up. That she gets her driving across town is like what happens in 24, right? Like, oh my God, we got 5 minutes to make it downtown from Ventura Hills. Like,
well,
right?
In
Also,
pandemic traffic, you can.
Right. The other thing really quick, there is no way, absolutely no way on God's green earth that an assistant that is working for that level of pop star that does that level of stuff driving all over town is driving that old beater of a Chevy Nova and has maintained her job. No way. That car would be breaking down all the time with the amount of stuff, like
nothing but errands. Yeah.
Right. She's going to be driving a, you know, first car, low end, bottom of the line, shitbox Honda that is at least, or Kia that is at least reliable and under warranty. I just had to say.
Yes, no, there are some geographical things that bothered me. Like, for example, whatever private airport Grace is flying into, but she lives in Malibu, right? Because at one point, Dakota Johnson is on PCH heading north.
Yeah, but the place where she sees Kelvin Harrison play is in Laurel Canyon. I thought maybe
Laurel
she lived in Laurel Canyon.
Oh my God.
But you see them going on the Sunset Strip several times because there's a giant billboard of Grace on Sunset Strip. So maybe she lives in Bel Air. Maybe she lives in Bel Air. But then why is Dakota Johnson schlepping with a car full of stuff up PCH? Things like that. But are there Hollywood Regency style houses like that in Malibu? I don't think so.
She lives in Malibu. She lives in Malibu, and
does she? Why are they driving home from the airport on Sunset Boulevard?
Don't they also go to Neptune's Net in this movie, or is that something else that I've seen
maybe.
recently? I'm trying to figure out.
I mean, wherever she lives,
Anyway.
unless she lives next door to
It's an LA of the mind.
unless Grace lives next door to where the show that the guy is doing that Dakota Johnson is late to. Honestly,
how did she
does
get there
pretty quickly.
honestly, that if she's not there when the show starts, wherever you are in LA, and she leaves, she's not going to make it by the time his set is done. No.
Well, maybe
unless he's doing like an hour-long set.
Maybe she couldn't leave as early as she knew she needed to leave to get there on time, but she does leave early enough to get there for the last song.
Maybe he's playing at the Canyon Club in Thousand Oaks. Boom.
Boom. Anyway,
playing at somebody else's bar mitzvah.
This is a charming, fun movie, and you should watch it.
It really is, and I'm very surprised. I'm saying 8.
I said 8.2.
What did I say? 8?
You said 8.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's 8.1 from us. Yes, go find it. Where is it streaming? This is a Focus Features release, right?
Yeah, so I think pretty much you can rent it at Amazon or iTunes or wherever you watched, Invisible Man or Emma or, any of the other recent Universal / Focus titles that they put out. So.
Cool.
But yeah, it is absolutely worth it, and I'm so thrilled for Nisha Ganatra because I was really let down by Late Night, but this really feels like she's firing on all cylinders. So yeah, check it out. Thanks for watching. Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out on social media at BeFastAllDay, and of course visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. We're winding up Mrs. America, still talking about The Great, and we're also reviewing a classic that was selected by our subscribers this month. So all that good stuff and much more over at Patreon. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.